So yeah, we wanted to talk about a project that we did using 3D printing to help people creating arms and hands for people with limb differences. So yeah, we just wanted to talk through that and talk about how potentially kind of the power of 3D Crowd could be used to help this project going forward. So my name's Ed Greig. I am the Chief Disruptor for Deloitte. My job and my team's job is to work with new technology and get it delivering tangible benefits as quickly as possible to our clients, to Deloitte ourselves, and to wider society. And I'm joined here by Claire as well.
Hi, so I'm Claire Hamby. I'm a director in Deloitte. My core sectors that I focus on are infrastructure, construction and real estate, but I'm also relationship lead for the Helping Hand project.
And also got Isla with us.
Hiya, my name is Isla Thomas. I'm a user researcher and experience design consultant by day, but as a bit of a side hustle, I am design lead for the Helping Hand project.
And we've also been joined by David as well.
Hey guys, David Green, I'm partner in Deloitte, and really trying to drive the magic we've done with some limited number of children into a larger group, and trying to get Deloitte at the center of a sort of crowdsourcing ecosystem to do more of what you're about to hear about.
So my team's motto is fall in love with the problem, not with the solution. It's kind of an unofficial Deloitte motto, but it's officially the motto of my team, the disruption team. And I think one of the things that really attracted me and us to 3D Crowd was the fact that was very much the 3D Crowd approach as well. It was all about focusing on the problem of how do we get PPE into the hands of healthcare workers as quickly as possible, and focusing on solving that problem rather than getting too hung up on the kind of the specifics of the solution. So that's very much the way that we work. It's very much a user-centered kind of design philosophy. I know that there's a talk about human-centered design later on today, which I will definitely be tuning in for. But that's very much the way that we work. The user is kind of at the center of everything we do. And when the user's at the center of what you do, it's very much about kind of starting small and testing often so that you can get that user feedback all the way through. And again, I think that was something that 3D Crowd was very good for. One of the things that were the problems that we wanted to look at was around technology adoption within the NHS, and we had a hypothesis that 3D printing could potentially for prosthetics specifically could be something that was very helpful. And it would be an interesting place to look at this kind of problem of technology adoption within the NHS, because even if the cost savings, the potential cost savings was so large that even if we didn't create a perfect process, we thought that we would still be able to see some benefits from the work that we were doing. And so we did print off some test devices to show that our 3D printers were kind of capable of producing these devices. And I was actually giving a talk about that, which was actually when I first met Claire. And so, yeah, do you want to talk a bit about that, Claire?
Yeah, sure. So a few years back, when I first joined Deloitte, I went to a real estate construction and infrastructure event, 2-day event. And during the event, different people come in from around the firm talking about different innovative technologies and different opportunities that they're seeing within those sectors. And one of the people that walked into the room was Ed. And Ed came in with a variety of things that he'd built on the 3D printers. And he started during his speech to pass these things around the room. And one of the things that he passed around the room was a 3D printed hand. And I was sat there from a perspective of being an auntie of Phoebe, who was 5 years old at the time. And I'd been waiting for a moment like that in terms of seeing disruptive technology coming towards me. And that is because the best that she'd been offered so far via the NHS was in terms of passive hands, which don't do anything and look like the hand that she hasn't got, or hook hands, the same as the photo that's being shown now. And it's extremely demoralising as a family to see those images, that image in particular. And I felt quite overwhelmed as the hand was coming towards me, held it, and then started to cry. And at that moment, Ed came over and said, why is it having such an impact on me? And so I described about Phoebe, and I just really excited about the opportunity that this type of technology can bring to her. And he said, please don't cry, Claire, shall we make a hand together? And so that was amazing, because that night I went home to my brother and his wife, and I said, do you want to come on this? And they said yes. And then Phoebe just said, that'd be amazing, Auntie Claire, to start looking at these type of hands for me.
Brilliant. And well, I mean, it was it was an amazing moment, and it was great to be able to kind of start off that journey, because one of the other mottos that we have, and we have a couple, but these are the two main ones, is think big, start small, test often, and then scale fast. And I think we had this big idea about helping the NHS with kind of technology adoption and kind of looking at that, but we wanted to kind of start small, and starting with a single person, a single child, seemed like the best way to go, because I think it's very easy when you start a process thinking about doing it at scale to kind of compromise on the user experience right from the start, because you think, well, we're going to have to scale, so we won't be able to do those things. And I think then sometimes you can tend to lose some of the personal touches that potentially can work at scale, but you don't even put them in because you're thinking from the start about scale rather than thinking about the users. And so what we did we got Phoebe to come down to our London office, to our digital studio, back in the before times when this was possible. And we showed her about 3D printing, and we showed her some of the 3D printed objects that we had. And then we sent her a plain white hand with some Sharpies so that she could color it in and kind of personalize it herself, just to check that the mechanism worked. You can kind of see there on the diagram how the mechanism works, because that was a question that came up yesterday. So basically the hand is strapped, and she has a cuff above the elbow as well. And so when she bends her arm, the strings that are running along the back of the arm, those then tighten up, and then that causes the fingers to close into a fist. So she's then able to grip the cup that she's holding there, for example. So it's entirely mechanical, just driven by the strings. And then there are rubber bands on that particular hand. There are rubber bands that cause the fingers to spring back once that tension is released. So after that hand worked out well, what we did was we sent up a template so that she could design her next hand. We told her that the printer could do 2 colors if we swapped filament halfway through, because at that point we just had an Ultimaker 2. And this was the design that she came up with, which is Princess Poppy from the film Trolls, in case you haven't seen the film. And so, but yeah, this was the design her mum came up with. So also told that it was 2 colors, but drew a rainbow, which was, you know, good because it was pushing the boundaries of what was possible. But we had to take some artistic license with it. But this was the design that we delivered, which is again Princess Poppy, and in just 2 colors. And then that was the printed off and assembled version that you can see there. And this is a video of that Phoebe took, or that was taken of Phoebe when she started brushing her hair for the first time using this particular one. She actually did a whole load of tests using it because Phoebe is very good at the kind of test often part of the philosophy. So yeah, that was her brushing her hair with her left hand, which was the first of kind of many test videos that we got through. And then we made a few more kind of modifications to it. So we added these kind of finger grips to the design. We're saying this is the kind of the Team Unlimited Phoenix hand design that's being used here. And then this was a photo of her going to school with the Princess Poppy hand for the first time. And I think this photo is really special because what it shows is a completely changed relationship with her kind of arm, because the previous arm that she had, I mean, it spent a lot of time in its drawer, but it was a functional prosthetic. It did the job that it was supposed to do as a prosthetic, in terms of it was very robust, it had good grip strength, it would survive if you dropped it, all of those kind of things. So as solving the problem of how do we create a functional prosthetic, it solved that problem really well. The problem was that's not the problem that they should have been falling in love with. In this case, the problem you need to fall in love with is how do you create a functional prosthetic that a 6-year-old actually wants to wear, because Phoebe was 6 by this time, and that was the real issue. And the problem is, without adoption, there is no innovation, because the stuff that you've created ends up in a drawer. And the fact that she's accessorized her arm with her hairband, I think is such an important step, and shows how much kind of that relationship has changed, because she's treating it as an accessory rather than something that she has to wear because her occupational therapist says that she has to. So this was her again accessorizing it with her clothes. You know, you could see it matches her outfit. I'm not very good at fashion, but I know that kind of matches. And then we created a number of other hands afterwards. And Isla, maybe you want to talk a bit about the further iterations that we did.
Yeah, of course. So when I got involved with the team, it was kind of tail end of 2017. I joined Ed's disruption team. And at that point, we received a WhatsApp video from Phoebe asking for a Princess Elsa from Frozen arm. So that's what you can see here on the image, us kind of putting together some snowflakes and swirls and doing a blue and white color scheme to try and match Princess Elsa from Frozen. I think it's fair to say that Phoebe was pretty happy with the arm when she received it. Said that lots of the kids in her class were pretty jealous because Princess Elsa from Frozen was really the thing back then. But we also got feedback that Phoebe found it so special that she was almost scared to wear it and scared that it would break, because these things aren't made to last forever and they are fragile. So what we then did was we created this rainbow / rough and tumble arm for Phoebe, so that she hopefully had more faith in being able to engage with the arm. In case it broke, she had a spare. We also got a request for a unicorn arm, because that was the big thing on the playgrounds at that time. So then we put together the unicorn arm for Phoebe. And I think, yeah, my mum helped me out with that one as well. So I've got some really nice pictures of my mum sat at the kitchen table helping to file down some pieces. And we tried some more experimental arms as well. Phoebe's arms to date had been all elbow operated, but because Phoebe had a little bit of her arm beyond the wrist, we wanted to see if we could produce a model that she could use her wrist action to leverage. Unfortunately, with experimentation comes a lot of failures as well. So we learned that the hard way, but Phoebe was very good spirited with it all, and gave some really good harsh feedback, but harsh but fair. Which just, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And you can see the Manchester United arm in the middle, which was particularly special as well. I'll hand back to you, Ed, to talk through that.
Yeah, so it was really exciting. We actually started to at this point had scaled it up to a number of other children and young people, and Max was one of those, who's the young guy standing behind Phoebe there, and we got an amazing opportunity for Phoebe and Max to kind of go out with walk out with their favorite team. I mean, Claire, do you want to talk a bit about that? Because that came about through the Northwest office connection.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just take this moment as well before that, just from a family perspective, to describe magic moments. You know, that first hand, the white hand that was sent up by Ed and Isla, you know, to see Phoebe shake my brother's hand for the first time. Phoebe was diagnosed in the womb as having a limb difference. And, you know, one of the things that we did talk about as a family was her ability to shake hands. And to overcome that with that white hand was just a moment that I'll never forget. Another moment was her going to school. Teachers used to say when she wore the hook hand, she'd hide her hand under the desk. And then when she had the poppy hand and the other hands, the hand was in full show. And the impact on Phoebe's confidence was profound. Seeing her hold a swing in a playground with two hands just to help her balance and to be able to swing the swing by herself has been amazing. And then holding two hands in front of yourself, I think when you take for granted like that, but when she wears a hand and those two arms are in equal length, and seeing two hands at the end of it had a massive impact. And over to becoming a United. So that came about after seeing the impact on Phoebe making hands. Then we made a call to action with a few limb difference charities, and Max came through off the back of a closed Facebook group, and I was getting to know his mum, and Isla in particular started working on the first Manchester United hand, and because it had a Manchester United logo on it, then I was very conscious of us building a hand and it has a company's logo. And then his mum also said, imagine when he gets this Manchester United hand, if he was able to walk out on the pitch as a mascot. It was just a vision off a mum that I just thought, gosh, we have an amazing sports business that has great relationships. I need to talk to Manchester United about a logo being used on a hand. And so before you knew it, there was momentum here around having a conversation with Manchester United. And then just within like 24 hours, they came through and said, would the children, you know, we're a Manchester United family by coincidence as well. And so would Max and Phoebe like to be mascots on the day at Manchester United? And what a magic experience that was. And we were able to all go and experience that, and seeing the children walk out on the pitch. Gosh, lifetime memories being created through this project.
It was very special to see them walk out. As I've said, I'm a Spurs fan, so the following 90 minutes was more difficult, made better by the fact that Isla was there with me. I should caveat, but it wasn't the next 90 minutes weren't as great. But the them walking out was really, really special. So. At this point, as we were kind of scaling it up, we were starting to look at how we could have an impact beyond the children and adults that we were working with directly. And so at this point, we got more involved with the organization that had actually provided the open source designs for this, which was an organization called eNABLE. And so we got more involved with kind of the leadership of that organization. And what we're looking to do now is to help them in order to kind of scale this up to have a global impact, as well as having the impact on the children and adults who we are directly printing for. And they do have kind of a matching system that's in place in order to match people with limb differences with makers to help them out. I think it's fair to say that matching system, the thing that they've struggled with, and I think this is something that's interesting about 3D Crowd as well, I think there was that recognition that you need to look at kind of the whole supply chain, you know, the whole end-to-end journey. And you can't just focus on the making part, because there's actually much more to it, to actually getting the helpful 3D printed device into into people's homes, and so, or into hospitals in the case of 3D Crowd. And so I think that's something that we are trying to help with, and trying to kind of help scale up the ability to kind of raise awareness and demand on that side, as well as kind of sustaining the very passionate maker community that they have. And I mean, something that we've been going through as well, though, this was something of a blocker that we hit as we were looking to kind of scale up, and it's a blocker that will be familiar to the 3D Crowd audience as well, is that we did need to look at kind of the medical device regulation. And I mean, David, do you want to talk a bit more about that and kind of our efforts to scale it up?
Yeah, sure. Medical device regulation came about when we realized that doing one or two of these we could probably get away with doing without creating too much of an issue. But as we wanted to scale this to tens and hundreds and ultimately thousands of children and adults that we can look after, we realized that we had to comply with the regulation, and spent a lot of time with various different lawyers and found out that what we needed to do. And we spend a fair amount of time now kind of getting all of the paperwork sorted, so that the devices that we are creating are actually fully compliant with medical device regulations. It was a painful process, but I think we've now got all of the processes sorted. And I guess this is where the 3D Crowd comes in, because now that we've got it sorted, what we want to do is kind of press on the big red scale up button that connects lots of different printer capabilities with lots of people who need a helping hand, and do that in a way that is compliant and protects the users of these devices, but obviously the makers as well. So we're pretty much there now. So really keen to start recruiting makers and people who will, as Ed says, help with the supply chain of connecting the suppliers of the devices with the people who really need them.
And do you have that first hand? Do you have that with you? The first arm that we're yeah.
So yes, I do. So this is the Kwawu hand. So this is the latest device that we've started producing. It's a little bit different from the one that you saw in the videos earlier, in that it has more of a tube structure for the hand, for the limb, but it works in the same way. So you can see here that the bicep is attached by Velcros at this end, and essentially by turning this, the hand grips, and you can see it actually picks up things and so on and so forth. So that's the latest model. It's also a model that allows you to twist the wrist, which was the latest ask from Phoebe. She really enjoyed using the devices that she's had so far, but she couldn't actually turn the wrist on the models that she's had before. So an interesting adaptation there. Equally, we don't have silicone fingertips anymore because we've actually found some rubberized paint. So we can just paint the fingertips now, and that allows the fingers to grip without having those silicone fingertips. So there's a few different changes in there. We also don't have elastic bands to use to create the spring mechanism in these hands. If I hold it really close to the screen, you might see that inside the hinge there is actually a 3D printed bit of rubber, and that's what provides the spring on these hands. So a few changes for this device, and this it's a lot more complicated to make than the devices you've seen before, but it's definitely got some significant advantages as well.
I just, from a family perspective, Phoebe hasn't received this hand yet, and so just the moment where there's a new little WhatsApp video created of Phoebe putting that hand on, and thinking back to, hook hand, and actually seeing her wearing that hand and the sophistication of it, but it's still being lightweight, and also that it's made on a 3D printer. Technology is just awesome to have such an impact. Phoebe's now 9, and that hand on my perspective.
And so, I mean, as Claire says, it's a really special thing to be involved with. We now are working directly with 27 children and 1 adult, and the WhatsApp videos are incredibly special. And so if you do want to get involved, please do join the eNABLE-Prosthetics channel on Slack. So search for eNABLE or Prosthetics, and that should come up in the channel list. And we'll talk more about what we will do. What we would like to do is kind of focus on really kind of streamlining the work that's happening in the UK with eNABLE, as well as assisting kind of the global stuff that they're doing, bringing together kind of the UK chapters of eNABLE. So eNABLE is organized into kind of various chapters, and we'll keep those kind of that local sort of chapter structure, which is there at the moment, similar to the different regions that we've had in 3D Crowd, but just look to kind of unifying a kind of UK-wide approach to that. And then I think that is something that will allow us to kind of move forward and have an impact relatively quickly, while at the same time, hopefully preserving some of that amazing resource of all of the kind of the knowledge around 3D printing. Because certainly I think it would have made our lives a lot easier during this if we'd had the incredible troubleshooting ability of the 3D Crowd there to kind of help during the process. So I think having that, having all of that skill and that knowledge, combined with kind of the coordinators and the logistics experience, and the ability to kind of raise awareness and demand, I think all of those things combined together could really help to accelerate this project to the next stage. So thank you very much for listening. I'll hand it back to Sam in case there are any questions.
Got a few questions actually. So we've got two from Andrew actually. Roughly how long does each arm take to print?
Well, that is a very good question. Theoretically, it can be done in as little as 10 hours, but as I mentioned, it would have been a lot easier if we'd had the troubleshooting ability of the 3D Crowd. As sometimes it took longer than that, and there were kind of stoppages in the way. I don't know what the times are like for the Kawawu, but I mean, I think the quickest we did it was probably, in terms of printing and assembly, was probably about 2 days end to end, was probably the quickest, when we had to do it in in a rush. But it's about, for the Team Unlimited arm, it's about 10 hours actual printing, as long as everything prints correctly first time. But the Team Unlimited actually prints flat and then you thermoform it, so it's actually a relatively quick print. How long does the Kawaii take? It's a bit longer, isn't it?
Yeah, it's probably closer to 14, 16 hours for an equivalent time frame.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the time. But yeah, I mean, if we've got the time optimization, the way in which the visor printing, the frame printing times were optimized, I think we can potentially get better at that.
Okay, and there's a follow-up question from him as well. Roughly how many are needed in the UK?
That is a really good question. Claire, do you know?
So there's 1 in 2,000 children born each year was the latest data we had. So scaling up, 61 million people, 1 in 2,000. So maths are beyond me on that, but I think it was between 50 to 100,000 people, because also, whilst we have started helping one adult, the children, we are understanding from all the different age groups we've got to know that it's from 0 to 17, but really 3D printing is only suitable from like 4.5 onwards, so it's 4.5 years up to 17, and if each hand lasts about 6 months because of the child growing, then the maths around that as well. So there's a real demand, and there's also a global demand as well. So on this session we don't even cover about the partners that we've been getting to know globally, and also the different demands, like over in the States is more so for prosthetics, why a child might want a hand like this, they're similar to the UK, but over in Asia where children are working as well, then different demands on these type of hands and different strands. That's where the future of the technology going is just really so important because of life chances.
Yeah, I think that's it's absolutely right. I mean, there is a huge amount of demand. I mean, I think one of the things that we learned, which I think is quite important in terms of certainly how we intend the arms to be used in the UK, is very much that they are used as seen as a tool rather than seen as somehow a fix for the person. We were lucky enough to have someone working with us on the project at the start who had also been born with a limb difference, and she was kind of very clear that the way in which prosthetics were kind of given to her and talked about with her were very much as a way of fixing her, and that really put her off using prosthetics. Actually, she still doesn't use prosthetics now, whereas she was much happier with the idea of it being seen as a tool that you would use, like a fork or a pen or something like that. And it can be colorful and it can express your personality and everything like that, but it's not seen as something that's a fix. And certainly that's the way that Phoebe has been using it. She'll, when she wants to do something, she'll grab the arm and then she'll use it then. So I think that was something that was really important, and it was really great to get Louise's insight on that, because I think we might have we might have been guilty of kind of framing it in that way if we hadn't had that kind of clear direction from her.
And just to build on that, actually, just because our family, because we are from the Northwest, and Dame Sarah Story, the Paralympian, lives near us. And when we, understood about Phoebe's limb difference, and family did get to know her, and she's also given the feedback around on Twitter, for example, just how inspiring these hands are, and how it, could have had an interesting turn of events for her had these types of hands very much in the space of where Louise's experience was. And so there's a different generation being positively impacted by this technology and the advancement of it, and they're embracing it.
Yeah.
Great. So we had one other question as well from a couple of people of how they get involved. And obviously the Slack channel is great for people within 3D Crowd. Is there a way for people outside of 3D Crowd to get involved?
So you can go to Enabling the Future on which is if you Google Enabling the Future, that will come up, and that does have links through to the work that eNABLE are doing, and hopefully we'll still be able to link up all of that, the kind of the UK efforts around that. That was why we were keen to have people in the Slack channel as well, or to kind of to reach out to us, via LinkedIn or whatever, if you'd like to do it that way, just so we can kind of coordinate those efforts. Because again, I think 3D Crowd has shown how having some coordination over those efforts can make a big difference, and avoid us kind of reinventing the wheel on this stuff, which I think is key. So yeah.
Great.
So do reach out to us if you'd like to know more and you aren't on the Slack.
I think we've got one final question from Ariel on: have you investigated using electronics, sensors or actuators to help let the users control the hands without bending the elbow?
Yes, that's a really good question. I was hoping someone would ask that. So we absolutely have, and when I started, I was really excited about the idea of using kind of myoelectric, like a myoelectric band in order to be able to send signals. And there was actually a band called the Myo Band, which was released, which was kind of Bluetooth compatible, and it seemed like a really good kind of easy way to make that happen. The thing that we found, and I think this is a good illustration of falling in love with the problem, not in love with the solution, is that the mechanical ones, especially for people who have a transradial limb difference, whereby they do have limb beyond the elbow, the mechanical ones are really good, and they actually do the job in a very kind of simple way, and are kind of very effective. I mean, there are some excellent myoelectric hands out there, which are, like, for example, the Open Bionics myoelectric hands, which are really, really good. And they're an excellent organization who we've kind of spoken to. And our view is that for kids as kind of as young as Phoebe, the best route is to kind of get them used to the idea of having this tool, and then for them to kind of then graduate onto using a myoelectric prosthesis later on. But because they've got used to the idea of prosthetics, and prosthetics have kind of been framed in a positive way to them, then I think that's something that is possible. Whereas if you look at Louise, she had been put off prosthetics, and then by the time that she might have used a myoelectric device, to be honest, she wasn't really interested in that. Interestingly, the one adult that we have worked with, he was given a myoelectric device through the NHS, And the myoelectric device costs around, it can be around £30,000 for one of the myoelectric devices, which when you look at what the Open Bionics hands are costing, and we've also done some work with the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital at Stanmore, and the open source design that they created as well, based off the Open Bionics one, that cost is astronomically high for a device that isn't actually that effective. So Mark, who was the older patient that we worked with, who was an amputee, unlike all of the kids who have had kind of congenital limb differences, he found the hand incredibly difficult to use because it's a myoelectric hand, but you have to learn. It's not taught how your muscles work. Instead, you have to learn to tense your muscles in a way that operates the arm. And if you're an amputee and older, that's incredibly difficult. The exciting thing about the stuff that the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital were doing was they were actually using virtual reality to train the prosthetic in how the muscles were moving. So people were watching a virtual hand and then tensing that. And then the data from that is then fed into the sensors that are put onto the arm, and then that allows you to create something that is kind of personalized to the person, and therefore much easier to operate and much more reliable. But at the end of the day, the stuff that we're making costs maximum kind of it's less than £100 to make, and is mechanical and reliable, and if you need to replace it with a new one, it's really simple to do that. So yeah, it's as I say, we were really excited to explore that direction, and actually some of the team are still exploring it, aren't they? Yame in South Africa is still exploring it, but I think the mechanical ones are very good, and they do the job.
Just to build one thing that you didn't say, which is the hands that we're making are very lightweight. And so one of the children did have the electric hand and just said struggling to lift it, versus having the 3D printed one, which is just so light and moves with the children. So
yeah. Which child was it who said
Evan?
One out? It was
Evan.
who?
Evan.
Evan had tried one. Yeah. So but thanks for the question, Ariel. Yeah, it's a good question, and thanks very much everyone for joining us, and do look forward to working with you on it in the future.